I'm Emily Martinez, 29 years old, and last Tuesday, my husband David died while my family celebrated my sister's birthday with a $10,000 cake. They knew he was dying. They chose the party anyway. The call came at 6:43 a.m. David had collapsed during his morning run, found unconscious on the trail he'd jogged for 6 years. At the hospital, as machines kept him alive, I frantically dialed my parents. Mom, David's had a massive stroke. The doctors say he has hours, maybe less. Please come. Through the phone, I heard champagne glasses clinking, laughter, and my sister Jessica's voice squealing about her dream birthday venue. My mother's response still echoes in my nightmares. Emily, sweetie, we're at Jessica's milestone 30th. Everyone flew in from out of state. We already paid for the ice sculpture and the band. Can't you just handle this? You're always so good in a crisis. Mom, my husband is dying. Well, maybe call us tomorrow when we're not so busy. She hung up. David died 3 hours later, holding only my hand and our 7-year-old daughter Maya's. What my family didn't know was that David had been secretly recording their treatment of me for years. And when his lawyer read the will 3 months later, those recordings would destroy them in ways they never saw coming. Growing up, I learned early that in the Martinez family, there were two roles: Jessica the star and Emily the supporting cast. Jessica got the lead in every school play while I ran the lighting. Jessica got the car for her 16th birthday, while I got a lecture about responsibility and a bus pass. When Jessica decided to pursue her artistic passion at a private art college that cost $60,000 a year, my parents took out a second mortgage. When I graduated valedictorian and earned a full scholarship to State University, they said they were proud but not surprised, as if my achievements were expected, not celebrated. The pattern continued into adulthood. Jessica's dream wedding cost $45,000. My parents emptied their retirement savings to give her the fairy tale she deserved. For my wedding to David, they handed me a $200 gift card to Target and said, "You're so practical. We knew you'd appreciate something useful." But David saw what my family never did. I met him in college when he was a quiet computer science major who spent late nights in the lab building apps that nobody understood yet. While my parents dismissed him as that shy tech boy, David was quietly revolutionary. "Your family doesn't see you," he told me on our second date, after I'd spent an hour apologizing for my mother's passive-aggressive comments at dinner. "But I do. You're brilliant, Emily. You just shine differently than Jessica." David was right about more than he knew. After graduation, while Jessica bounced between failed art ventures, a pottery studio that closed in 6 months, a freelance graphic design business that never gained clients, an Etsy shop selling overpriced candles, David was building something extraordinary. He started small, developing security software for local businesses. Then came the breakthrough, an encryption program that tech giants wanted to license. Within 5 years, David's company SecureCore was worth $3.2 million, with major corporations paying hundreds of thousands for his innovations. The beautiful irony? My family had no idea. David dressed simply, drove a 5-year-old Honda, and never flaunted wealth. When my parents asked what he did for work, he'd just say, "computer stuff," and change the subject. They assumed he was some low-level IT support. Meanwhile, Jessica's art gallery, funded by 3 different family loans totaling $80,000, was hemorrhaging money. Every few months brought a new crisis: rent due, suppliers demanding payment, just one more investor meeting that would change everything. My parents always came to her rescue. "Artists need support," they'd say, writing another check. When I quietly paid for Maya's preschool or handled my own medical bills, I got no recognition. I was just doing what Emily always did, handling everything herself. David watched this dynamic for years, saying little but missing nothing, He saw how my mother's eyes lit up when Jessica called, versus the resigned, "Oh, hi, Emily," when I phoned. He noticed how family gatherings revolved around Jessica's latest drama, while my accomplishments went unmentioned. "They're going to regret this someday," he told me once, after my parents missed Maya's first dance recital because Jessica needed help moving apartments. "People who don't value what they have usually lose it." I thought he meant they'd realize their favoritism hurt me. I never imagined he was planning to ensure they'd face the consequences of their choices. 3 months after David's funeral, my parents called a family meeting at their house. Maya was at her friend's sleepover, and I thought maybe, finally, they wanted to check on how we were grieving. I was so naive. The moment I walked into their living room, I knew something was wrong. Jessica sat at the dining table with a laptop open and papers spread everywhere. My father had that serious business expression he wore during financial discussions. My mother kept wringing her hands and avoiding eye contact. "Emily, sweetie, we need to talk about your situation," my mother began carefully. "About David's assets." My stomach dropped. "What about them?" My father cleared his throat. "We've been doing some research. David's company was worth more than any of us realized. The life insurance alone is substantial. And then there's the business valuation, the house, the investments. We're concerned about you making smart decisions with all that money," Jessica chimed in, her voice dripping with fake concern. "It's a lot of responsibility for someone who's grieving." I stared at them. "Are you seriously discussing my husband's death like a business opportunity?" "Don't be dramatic," my father said. "We're family. Family takes care of each other." Then came the presentation. Jessica had actually prepared a PowerPoint titled "Fair Family Financial Distribution." I watched in horror as she clicked through slides showing pie charts and percentages. "We think a 30-70 split makes the most sense," Jessica explained, her eyes gleaming. "You and Maya keep 30%, which is still plenty for a comfortable life. The remaining 70% gets distributed among family members who need support." 70%? I whispered. "Well, my gallery is about to close without an emergency injection of capital," Jessica continued. "And Mom and Dad's retirement fund took a hit in the market. Plus, David would want his family taken care of, right? He was always so generous." My mother nodded eagerly. "Jessica deserves happiness too, honey. She's worked so hard on her art. And your father and we're getting older. Our medical expenses." "David barely knew you," I said quietly. "He saw you maybe 6 times a year at family dinners where you ignored him." "That's not true," my father protested. "We always included David." "You called his work computer stuff and changed the subject every time he tried to explain what he did." Jessica leaned forward. "Look, Em, I know you're emotional right now, but think practically. You're young. You'll remarry eventually. Maya will be fine, but this is our one chance to secure everyone's future." The words hit me like physical blows. My husband's death was their one chance. My daughter's inheritance was their lottery ticket. My grief was an inconvenience blocking their payday. "David specifically left everything to Maya and me," I said, standing up. "That was his choice." "But was it really his choice?" my father asked. "Or were you influencing him? He was so devoted to you, maybe he didn't consider the bigger picture." The accusation hung in the air. They were suggesting I'd manipulated my dying husband into cutting them out. "I can't believe you just said that." "We're not trying to hurt you," my mother said quickly. "We just think David would want us all taken care of, especially Jessica. She's been struggling for so long." "Jessica's been struggling for 15 years while you've bailed her out every time. Now you want to use my daughter's future to fund her next failure?" The room erupted. Jessica accused me of being selfish. My parents called me ungrateful. They reminded me of every time they'd helped me: the car repair in college, the wedding gift, the birthday presents for Maya. As I headed for the door, my father delivered the final blow. David's gone, Emily. He doesn't need that money anymore. But your living family does. I turned back, trembling with rage and heartbreak. You want to know what David would really want? He'd want his daughter's college fund protected from relatives who see her father's death as their personal windfall. I was almost to my car when my phone rang. It was Thomas, David's lawyer. Emily, I'm sorry to bother you, but something's come up. I need you to come to my office tomorrow. There's actually another document David left, something he never mentioned to you. My hands shook as I held the phone. What kind of document? It's complicated. But after what you've told me about your family's demands, I think you need to see it. Bring them with you if you can. All of them? Yes. Trust me on this one, Emily. David was very thorough in his planning. As I drove home, my mind raced. What else had David prepared? What had he seen that I'd missed? Tomorrow's meeting would change everything. I just didn't know how yet. The next morning, we all gathered in Thomas's oak-paneled office. Maya sat beside me, unusually quiet but clutching a manila envelope she'd insisted on bringing. My parents and Jessica filled the leather chairs across from us, their faces a mix of anticipation and barely concealed greed. Before we discuss the additional document, Thomas began, I believe Emily wanted to address yesterday's conversation. I was about to speak when Maya suddenly stood up, her small voice cutting through the tension. I have something for Grandma and Grandpa, she announced. My mother smiled condescendingly. Oh, sweetie, the adults are talking about important things right now. This is important too, Maya said firmly, channeling David's quiet confidence. It's about Daddy and what he would really want. She walked over to my father and handed him the envelope. Inside was a piece of construction paper, but as he unfolded it, I saw she'd created something remarkable. It looked like a receipt, carefully drawn with colored pencils. At the top, in Maya's neat 7-year-old handwriting, Family Love Receipt for Grandma, Grandpa, and Aunt Jessica. The itemized list below made my heart break. Visiting when Daddy died, $0, item not available. Hugging Mommy when she cried, $0, out of stock. Asking if Maya is sad, $0, never ordered. Coming to Daddy's funeral on time, $0, delayed by party. Helping with groceries or meals, $0, service not provided. At the bottom, in bold letters, total family love given, 0, 0. And then, in smaller text, but you want $240,000 of Daddy's money. Math doesn't work. The silence was deafening. My father's hands trembled as he held the paper. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Whether from shame or manipulation, I couldn't tell. Jessica stared at her 7-year-old niece as if seeing her for the first time. Daddy taught me, Maya continued, her voice steady despite the adult chaos around her, that when people only visit you when they want something, they're not really family. Real family shows up when you're sad, not when you're rich. My father tried to speak, but no words came. The mathematical precision of a child's logic had cut through every justification they'd prepared. Maya, sweetheart, my mother finally whispered. We do love you, and your mommy. Then why didn't you come when Daddy was dying? Maya asked simply. Before anyone could answer, Thomas cleared his throat. Actually, there's something else you all need to know. David left very specific instructions about this exact situation. He reached for a sealed envelope on his desk. He was quite thorough in his planning. Thomas opened the sealed envelope and pulled out a USB drive. David created what he called an insurance policy 3 years ago. He'd been documenting your family's treatment of Emily. He plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen filled with audio files, each labeled with dates and locations. Christmas 2021, kitchen conversation. Maya's birthday, 2022, living room. Jessica's gallery opening, 2023. My family's faces went white. David had a habit of leaving his phone recording during family gatherings, Thomas explained. He documented 3 years of conversations where you mocked Emily's intelligence, complained about her choices, and discussed your financial expectations. He clicked on one file. Jessica's voice filled the room. Emily's so boring. David probably makes decent money, though. When they die, we should make sure Mom and Dad get something. Another clip. My mother saying, Emily always acts so independent, but she'll need our help eventually. Good thing David seems successful. My father's voice. That tech stuff David does must pay well. We should stay on their good side. Thomas paused the playback. The codicil states that if any family member harasses, manipulates, or demands money from Emily or Maya following David's death, the entire estate transfers to the Children's Technology Education Foundation. The room was silent except for my mother's quiet sobbing. There's more, Thomas said, loading a video file. David recorded this message 2 weeks before he died. David's face appeared on screen, sitting in his home office. If you're watching this, it means my family has likely pressured Emily for money. I protected my wife and daughter because love means shielding those you cherish from people who would exploit their grief. He looked directly into the camera. Emily deserves better. Maya deserves better, and now they'll have it. The silence in Thomas's office stretched for what felt like hours. My father stared at the frozen video screen showing David's gentle but determined face. My mother had stopped crying and sat motionless, the weight of their exposed greed settling over her like a heavy blanket. Jessica looked smaller somehow, her usual confidence completely shattered. How long? My father finally whispered. How long was he recording us? 3 years, Thomas replied matter-of-factly. He started after Maya's 4th birthday party, when you complained that Emily wasn't contributing enough to the gift fund despite having just paid for the entire venue. My mother flinched. I remembered that day. David had quietly pulled me aside afterward, asking if I was okay. I'd brushed it off, saying that was just how my family was. Apparently, he'd decided it wasn't okay at all. The recordings are legally obtained, Thomas continued. David was present during all conversations, and Illinois is a one-party consent state. More importantly, the codicil is ironclad. Any attempt to pressure Emily or Maya for money will trigger the charitable transfer immediately. Jessica stood abruptly. This is insane. He was spying on us. He was protecting his family, I said quietly, something you never understood. For the first time in my adult life, Jessica had no comeback. No manipulation, no guilt trip, no way to twist the situation in her favor. She gathered her purse and left without another word. My parents stayed, looking older than I'd ever seen them. Emily, my mother began, her voice trembling. We never meant— Yes, you did, I interrupted gently. David's recordings prove you meant every word. You were planning this before he even died. My father removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. What happens now? Now, you leave us alone to grieve. If you want to rebuild a relationship with Maya and me someday, it starts with respect, not money. Over the following months, something unexpected happened. My father began sending simple text messages, not asking for anything, just checking if Maya was doing okay in school. My mother started small, too, sharing memories of David that I'd never heard, acknowledging for the first time that he'd been a good husband and father. Jessica disappeared entirely for 6 months. When she finally reached out, it was with a genuine apology letter. No requests, no manipulation, just acknowledgement of the damage she'd caused. The most surprising change was in family gatherings. The few I agreed to attend were different now. Conversations weren't dominated by Jessica's dramas. My achievements weren't dismissed. Maya's artwork was displayed proudly on my parents' refrigerator, and they actually listened when she talked about school. It wasn't immediate forgiveness. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly. But for the first time in my life, I entered family spaces as an equal, not a supporting character in Jessica's story. David's protection had given me something I'd never had before: power. Not financial power, but the power of being valued, respected, and heard. Maya kept her handmade receipt in her room, next to a photo of her father. Sometimes I'd find her looking at both, and she'd say, "Daddy's still taking care of us, isn't he?" Yes, he was. Even from beyond, David's love continued to shield us from those who would take advantage of our grief. And slowly, carefully, we began building a new family dynamic, one based on genuine care rather than obligation or manipulation. 2 years later, as I watched Maya paint at her easel, her artwork now proudly displayed at my parents' house, I understand what David knew all along. Love isn't just about being there during the good times. Real love is protection, even when the person you're protecting doesn't realize they need it. David saw the patterns I'd normalized. He heard the dismissive comments I'd learned to ignore. While I was trying to keep peace, he was quietly documenting the truth. His recordings weren't about revenge. They were about ensuring that grief wouldn't make me vulnerable to people who'd spent years taking me for granted. Maya has learned lessons I wish I'd known at her age. When she draws her family love receipt, she reminds me that children see clearly what adults often miss. Love isn't measured in dollar amounts or grand gestures. It's in showing up, listening, and putting someone else's needs before your own convenience. My relationship with my parents and Jessica will never be what it was, and that's actually a gift. We're building something new now, based on mutual respect, rather than old patterns of enablement and dismissal. Some relationships need to break completely before they can heal properly. The most beautiful part? Maya knows her worth now. She'll never accept being treated as less than she is, because she's seen what happens when people try. David's final gift wasn't just protecting our finances. It was teaching us both that we deserve to be valued. Sometimes the strongest love is the quietest. David never raised his voice, never confronted my family directly, never demanded they change. Instead, he simply ensured that their choices would have consequences, and that love would always win over greed. In protecting us, he taught us to protect ourselves. That's a legacy worth more than any inheritance.